No BS Nutrition is eating canned and frozen vegetables, and we're not mad about it.
This is a 1-hour food fight against diet culture and its fake science messages.
Instead, we're passionate about celebrating real wellness.
I'm registered dietitian Hannah McGee.
And I'm neuroscience PhD student Tareq Youssef, and this is No BS Nutrition. Hannah.
Tareq.
Welcome to the pod.
Oh, welcome everyone to the pod. Hello everyone. Welcome back to No BS Nutrition.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome back. Hannah, I think everybody's been dealing with their isolation in a different way.
Totally.
Don't you agree?
I absolutely agree.
You know, people have their own ways to make themselves feel better. Some people, some people are doing things that maybe I would call, other people might also call a cry for help. Have you heard that phrase?
Sure.
So, as you can see, I have a really bad goatee now.
Yeah,
so everybody...
I noticed it yesterday on FaceTime when you were on FaceTime with Pat and the whole family, and I wasn't going to say anything there because everyone was there, but I did notice it. It looks great.
Oh, thanks. I'm embracing it. Sometimes you just need a change.
Totally. Yeah. So what sparked this? Like, what made you
It's kind of a long story. There's a Halloween costume that I want to do by the way, people who think about Halloween in February, again, another cry for help. I fall into that category. But there's a Halloween costume I want to do. That
wow.
requires
so you're
a goatee.
Starting to get ready for Halloween now?
Well, my circulating testosterone really doesn't comply with making facial hair speedily. So If I want any chance at having a full goatee, I have to start now.
Gotcha. Well, you know what? I have to say, Tareq, this might be TMI for some people, but I've been complaining to Pat about it for the last month. Because of social distancing and everything being closed down, I haven't been able to see my esthetician. So honestly, my upper lip hair is coming in a little too much for my liking right now, and I'll be open about it. You can't tell on
our pod.
Oh, I'm glad. Women have lip hair too, so
I think some of the coolest women have facial hair. My grade 7 teacher had incredible facial hair, and she was really cool.
Yeah,
is that okay to say?
Whatever. So anyways, if you're out there and you're sporting some new facial hair like Tareq and I, you're not alone.
I'm sure, I've seen lots of people's quarantine beards.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Totally.
And they look great.
Yeah.
I don't fit into that category.
I think you look great.
My goatee is kind of like a D-list celebrity.
A D-list celebrity. So what's a D-list celebrity? What?
I think... they
were on The Bachelor or something? Or is that even...
Oh, yeah, exactly. Maybe even... I think because reality TV is gaining a lot of popularity, right?
Yeah.
They're becoming big stars. I don't even think that. I think maybe a D-list celebrity. I was someone who. I was a guest on my goatee was a guest on a talk show, but was a really normal person
Sure.
who they got shafted by the local government or something, and
right.
they got their 15 minutes of fame.
Or someone that was on Dr. Phil.
Yeah. My goatee was on Dr. Phil.
Oh my god, love it! I love it. That's hilarious.
Is there anything new going on in NB that you'd like to make the people aware of? How's bubbling been going?
Bubbling's been good. We've been seeing our bubble every weekend, just hanging out. They actually have lifted some more restrictions in the last couple days. They actually opened, most stores are open now, but obviously operating
with maximum number of people allowed or
something.
I
think it's and the mall is open now. The malls are open, but they're only allowed they have obviously rules for when you're walking in the mall, and they have lanes that you have to walk in, and you have to walk in single file. and all the stores, I think, are only allowed 6 people in a store at a time or something like that.
It does feel very dystopian.
It does.
Feels like
I almost
Handmaid's Tale.
I almost don't want to. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, the walking in like single file and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I'm not ready to like go to the mall or go shopping or anything yet. Like, I just don't.
I also don't know, like, what do I need right now? Like, we're not going anywhere to like use anything.
I'm not really in the mood. There's nothing I need to buy. And 2, I also just don't. I want to go to the mall when I'm able to go to the mall and like do whatever. You know, I don't want to like stand in line to get into a store and have to walk in single file. So I don't know. Some people, like Pat was saying, they had interviewed some people who went to the mall when it first opened, and they were like,
I love that. That is my goatee. My goatee is someone who was interviewed for going to the mall during lockdown. Yes. That is my goatee.
Yeah. And basically people were like, I was just so tired of like doing online shopping. I just had to get out to the mall. And I'm just like,
oh my God. I don't feel any pity for those people.
Yeah, no.
I'm so tired of doing online shopping.
Yeah,
okay,
what?
Like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you're fine.
Yeah. And then restaurants have opened. Yeah, all restaurants and bars, I think, are open as well. But again, they're operating at
I definitely understand
capacity.
that like people need income. Like, it's not only it's like, I was talking to my friend Hayden about this. Like, I was saying like, oh, the government just like wants to reopen, or governments around the world want to reopen because they want to avoid an economic crisis, which is whatever.
Right.
Lots of people have different interests in that, but he made the point that like a lot of people are like without income right now, and if they're not working and maybe they don't qualify for benefits, they're kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place. So reopening the economy is really good for them too. So I do feel for people who like, you know, they have no option but to like, they need to go work because they need to pay bills. But I also feel strange about, I did see a picture recently of someone getting served at a restaurant and their waiter was wearing a mask, and I was like,
it's weird.
And again, it's like a cultural thing that maybe we're just not used to in North America, like people wearing masks, because obviously in other places people do it all the time. But seeing someone wearing a mask, like handing someone food, I was like, this is weird.
It is a little weird. It's just, something I guess we're not used to. Yeah.
Anyway.
What about you?
Well, aside from goatee life, because obviously I got a letter in the mail. I'm part of a club. I had to pay my dues to enter the membership.
You're in the Goatee Association of Canada.
I'm like 5 minutes away from getting an ear piercing, like only in one ear.
Okay.
I want to support anyone who has an ear piercing in one ear. Right. I want to lift those people up. I have a bunch of school stuff, as you know.
Yes.
Coming up, so that's just been my focus, really. Thomas made me a cake. It's pretty much my life, living the dream.
So you guys can have bubbles now too.
We can have bubbles now too, and you have to be mutually exclusive with your bubble.
Yeah, that's the same as here.
Like, you know what? I really want to bubble with, like, I'm sure a lot of people feel this way, like they miss their older family members. I really want to bubble with Thomas's grandmother. But like, I also don't want to bubble with her in case like I'm asymptomatic. She's like, you know, quite old, and she also lives in like an older community. I don't know.
It's tough.
It's hard to decide. Yeah. Because then you can't bubble with anyone else.
No, for sure, until they make another change or yeah. So you guys haven't decided on a bubble? No. Yeah.
No.
Well.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Hannah? Speaking of bubbles.
And
bursting them.
Yes.
And bursting them.
I was like, where are you going with this?
Okay. Segue. Okay. Speaking of bubbles and bursting them, Hannah, what is your BS of the week?
Thank you so much for asking. I'm just going to say that every time now. My BS of the week this week is, you know, a conversation that's been going on for a long time, but there was some just discussions that I came across on my own social media this week that made me want to talk about it and kind of set the record straight. And So what I want to talk about is the kind of refined sugar versus unrefined sugar choices.
Oh, yeah, please
that
talk
kind
about
of debate. That. So, your refined sugars or more refined sugars, so like table sugar or brown sugar, versus your more natural sugar sources like maple syrup and honey, or like agave syrup, things like that. I think they're usually liquid, or coconut sugar, I guess, is one that people say is less refined or automatically assume is a healthier option. So
sure.
Yeah, I want to address that assumption that, the natural sweeteners, or the more natural sweeteners, because white sugar does come from a plant, right? It's natural,
we don't mine it.
Yeah. I just want to address that, that the assumption that our maple syrups and our honeys are healthier or better for you than the refined ones. So there's really kind of two assumptions that I want to address, and the main one is that sweeteners like honey and maple syrup are better choices because they offer quote unquote more nutrients, or like more nutrition, or more nutritional benefits. I've seen a lot of people argue on social media that maple syrup is better because it's a source of minerals or antioxidants, and same with honey. They're like, it contains iron, or it contains whatever, and table sugar doesn't contain that because it's been stripped of those things in the refining process, which is technically true. Yes, maple syrup and honey do have higher contents of certain nutrients that are stripped from, your brown sugar or your white sugar in the refining process, but just because they contain more of these nutrients doesn't mean they contain enough to actually reap benefits from them. So if you think about honey or maple syrup, in order to actually reap the benefits of whatever vitamins or minerals like iron are in them, or meet your daily nutrient requirements of those things through maple syrup or honey, you'd have to eat so much honey, or maple syrup, like upwards of 10 cups of these things a day to actually meet those, meet any significant amount of these nutrients to get a benefit from them. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and in doing that, you'd be consuming way more sugar and carbs and calories or whatever than you need or than recommended.
And aside from even consuming those macronutrients, you'd make yourself sick.
Yeah, you would feel like shit. You wouldn't be like, I'm reaping the benefits, all the iron in maple syrup. So by doing that, by consuming those amounts of honey or maple syrup or whatever, you're essentially negating any of those proclaimed health benefits. You'd have to consume it in such excess that you're negating the benefits. So I think that's really important for, anyone to hear, but specifically for the people who say, well, I choose maple syrup because it has more nutrients, or it has an antioxidant in it, or whatever it is. It's you should be eating whatever sweeteners, whether it's white sugar or maple syrup or honey, in such moderation anyways that it doesn't matter which one you're choosing. Sure. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah, so, and I'm kind of guilty of this in a sense. In a lot of my recipes on my blog and things like that, I use the more unrefined sugars in certain muffins or things like that. I'll use maple syrup to sweeten it, or honey to sweeten it. And I guess, it's not because I think those things are any better. I would happily, use half a cup of sugar instead of half a cup of maple syrup or whatever. Totally. But as a food blogger, and I've heard other food bloggers kind of make this point, it's difficult on the internet because you want to be search engine friendly, and you want to your recipes to get noticed by your audience, and for a lot of us healthy food bloggers or whatever, that audience is looking for things sweetened with maple syrup or honey. Do you know what I mean?
You kind of want to cater to that audience because they're interested in that.
Yeah, even though I wish I could scream from the rooftops and everyone would know that using half a cup of white sugar versus half a cup of honey in my muffins isn't going to make a difference health-wise. It's still sugar.
Right. Well, here you are. You're doing it now. You're screaming from the rooftops.
Yeah. So, I just remember that. And just because something on the internet I don't know, say you see a recipe on Pinterest and it's like for these cookies that are quote unquote refined sugar free, so they're sweetened with, I don't know, maple syrup, they could still contain like 20 grams of sugar in a cookie. Like, it doesn't make it, do you know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't make it something that's like so much better for you just because it uses maple syrup instead of honey.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to point out.
I was going to say, you reminded me when you were talking earlier about like needing so much honey to get whatever micronutrients or minerals out of the honey. It reminded me of our episode about collagen, and how, yes, we can have increased intake of certain amino acids, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to automatically create more collagen, and that collagen is specifically going to be in the skin or in the nails.
Right. Exactly.
And that, it just makes me like think how much our podcast, like over and over again, is not just a nutrition podcast, but it's like a human physiology podcast. Like, so I think that's the missing gap between a lot of fake nutrition stuff, like diet culture stuff, and the reality is that there's not much discussion around the human physiology aspect of it. Like, it's almost like, yes, consuming more amino acids will make more protein. Like, that is true. So like, that's like very vague statement is true. So yes, like ingesting more collagen or like eating more honey will give you more of these minerals compared to maybe table sugar or something. But then like the missing link there between understanding why it doesn't necessarily result in a better health outcome is understanding that like the physiology is actually really complex, and just because you're going to dump something into you doesn't mean it's going to result in whatever outcome.
And that's the same as like detoxes or like juice cleanse. Like, people say things are going to detox your body, but you don't. It's just like kind of the missing understanding of how things in your body actually work and how physiology works. So it's like your liver and your kidneys and how those things do the detox work for you, and why you don't eat celery to like enhance that process.
Totally. No, I think that's a fantastic BS of the week.
Thank you.
I really like that. And I think a lot of people think that. You know what? I use maple syrup in baking. I don't like to, because obviously it'll add a lot of moisture compared to like using table sugar or using brown sugar. It has a lot more moisture, so you kind of have to account for that. Like, I don't know, take out an egg white or like take out some milk depending on what you're baking. But I use it like out of necessity, like as a substitute. Like, oh, I have maple syrup, like I'll use this as sugar because I don't have sugar or whatever.
Totally.
But I definitely don't do it because I think
it's healthier. You're going to reap all these health benefits from it. I agree. It's also a lot more expensive. Like, a lot of these more natural, I'm putting air quotes, options are a lot more expensive. Like honey, maple syrup, agave syrup, coconut sugar. Those things are really, compared to brown sugar or white sugar, are a lot more expensive. And I think that can make some people, feel bad if they are being told or bombarded with these messages that honey is so much healthier for you, but they can't afford to buy honey to put in all of their baked goods. It just,
or agave or coconut sugar, like those are only in the fancy part of the grocery store.
So it leads to a lot of people feeling bad, or like they're not doing enough for their health because they can't afford it, when in reality there's no difference. Like, sugar is sugar. Like, they're going to react the same in your body, and I'm sorry, but those mineral and nutrient differences between white sugar and more natural sugars it's so minimal, and it will not make a difference in the grand
And correct me
scheme of
if I'm
things.
wrong, it's not like there's anything in agave syrup or in maple syrup that's like, for example, like dietary fiber, that's going to change the way that we absorb something, that makes it slower or whatever. Digest something, I mean.
So there is, but not, again, it's not
substantial,
a big enough difference. So the maple syrup and honey do have, and we've talked about glycemic index a little bit before, they do have a lower glycemic index than table sugar. So if you were to consume a teaspoon of white sugar versus a teaspoon of maple syrup, there would be a small difference in like the spike in your blood sugar. Your blood sugar would go up higher and come down faster with the table sugar or the white sugar. And then it wouldn't be as big of a spike with maple syrup. But that's not, again, it's not a reason to be choosing maple syrup, because glycemic index is one thing that we look at, but then there's also glycemic load, which is, so glycemic index applies to like one specific food. Like each food has their like glycemic index number, but glycemic load is like looking at an entire meal. So bananas are have like a higher glycemic index, so they are something that gets digested pretty quickly and spikes your blood sugar fairly quickly compared to other things. But if you were to eat a banana with a tablespoon of peanut butter, that's going to, like, the glycemic load of that meal, so the peanut butter is going to make it has fat and protein that makes it break down and get absorbed slower. So the glycemic load of that meal would be like lower. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm obsessed when you talk about this stuff. It makes me so happy. It's so cool. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so like, again, it really depends on what you're, like, no one's just sitting there eating tablespoons of sugar. So it doesn't really matter. Like if you add brown sugar versus maple syrup to your oatmeal in the morning that has like nuts on it and seeds on it and maybe some peanut butter and things like that, the glycemic load of that meal is going to be pretty like identical. Like that 1 teaspoon or whatever of brown sugar versus maple syrup isn't going to make a huge difference. Right. Yeah.
I see. That makes complete sense. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice for people to take away, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could do a whole episode on, I always say this, we could do a whole episode on whatever, but we could do a whole episode on like glycemic index and glycemic load. But you really have to look at, you can't just choose a food just because it has a low glycemic index. You have to look at what else you're eating it with. And like, same with like a whole grain bagel versus a white bagel. The whole grain one's going to have a lower glycemic index, but if you were to eat that bagel with peanut butter and like some yogurt on the side or whatever, like that, the glycemic load of that meal is going to be lower. It's going to get digested and absorbed slower. So
that's really interesting. That's really good. I mean, that's really good nutrition info, honestly.
Yeah.
You know what? Honestly, lately even, and I'm very happy with this, but you just reminded me about like doing a new episode or whatever. Our BSs of the week are almost like episodes. It's like another topic. Like we're basically giving two topics per episode.
I know. That's why when I try to, just for everyone listening, when I try to like promote them on social media, I try to do like a post related to the main topic of the episode, and then I try to do a post related to the BS of the week, so that because we really do kind of talk for like 15-20 minutes about the BS of the week, which is like a mini episode in itself. Yeah, I think we're giving people lots of information. Let us know what you think. If you know, if you want our
subscribe to our Patreon for an uncut version of the BS of the week. Yeah. Just kidding.
No, but let us know like if you want them to be shorter, or if you, I don't know, if you think that this is good, if you like having the kind of two, or
maybe they should be their own episode.
Right. Yeah. Let us know. Hit us up.
Let us know.
Okay. Well, let's dive into our second topic, our main topic of this week. So this is a highly requested topic, I think. Do you agree?
Very highly requested. Yeah. My friend Joel requested this topic. We also had some listeners request this topic.
And I get asked all the time about this topic. So, and I haven't done
shout out to Cheyenne for requesting this.
Shout out
from us.
Shout out. I love shouting you guys out. Everyone, when they hear themselves shout out, they're like, oh my god, thank you so much. They get excited.
Shout out to Belgium for we're the #1 nutrition podcast in Belgium.
Yeah, shout out to you, Belgium. All right, so today we want to talk about, and I'm sure that you can tell this by the title, which we don't know what the title of this episode is yet, but we're going to talk about intermittent fasting. Oh, Tareq, look who just came. Can you see who just came into the room?
Oh, is it Bella?
Yeah. Hold on.
Everyone follow Boxer Beagle Bella on Instagram. Hi,
Bella, where are you?
Oh.
She's like, what are you doing, Hannah?
She's such a suck.
She is such a suck. All right, back to our topic. So we're going to talk about intermittent fasting, also known as time-restricted eating, but I think more commonly known as intermittent fasting. So I guess I want to start out by saying fasting, we know, is, it's nothing new to humanity. People have been fasting for a really long time for different reasons. Many people fast due to religious or cultural reasons. And then, historically, other people, and not historically, people may fast because of a famine. There's a, low food supply wherever.
Food availability.
Yeah, wherever they are. And then, more recently, people have been fasting for health or weight related reasons.
Health reasons.
Yes, quote unquote health reasons. And I think fasting kind of, from what I understand anyways, in the health and wellness realm, started as like fasting for like a week or 2 weeks to like lose weight before an event, or you know what I mean, like a juice fast or things like that. Yeah. It started as, it wasn't intermittent, it wasn't like on and off fasting, it was like you do a fast because you want to like slim down really quickly, which is problematic for a whole other slew of reasons. But
totally,
that's not the type of fasting that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about intermittent fasting. So this is something that I think started to gain a lot of popularity in like 2012, around there, and then like really started booming a couple years ago. I would say like 2017, 2018, and like to now, it's been like, it's a really kind of hot topic in conversation. And there is, and I tell me if you agree with this, but there is, quite a bit of research on intermittent fasting, that's been done.
I think so. Yeah.
From what I've read.
Compared to some other like sort of diety things, like intermittent fasting and calorie restricted diets, as far as I've seen, seem to be the most researched.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to say that. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of things we've talked about, like collagen or whatever, like don't have a ton of research behind them.
Right.
But this is something that actually has been, pretty well researched. So we're going to kind of look at that research and address some of the claims around it. There are a lot of claims, about what intermittent fasting does. So, I mean, we might not get to touch on all of them, but... And
there's a lot of variations of how people do it.
Right. So that's kind of what...
Which is really troublesome for the research.
For research, exactly. And I was going to say that, so intermittent fasting is kind of an umbrella term because there's so many different ways that you can fast. I think the most popular from what I've read there's 3 of them. So there's alternate day fasting. So that's like... Yeah. One day you have like essentially you fast or you have little to no intake, and then the next day is like regular, quote unquote regular eating, and then the next day would be fasting, and then the next day so you kind of alternate day to day. And then the next one is whole day fasting. So I think the most popular form of whole day fasting is the 5-2 like programmer method. So that's like 5 days eating normally.
Oh, right.
And then 2 days fasting or eating very little. So like less than, 500, 600 calories. And that's, again, something that's really not well defined. Like, what is a fast? Some people define that as eating absolutely nothing. And then some people say that's like eating less than 500 calories. So...
And I'm sure we're going to get into it, but also like the way that like the foods that you consume that fall within that calorie intake can vary greatly.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like what results in a lot of diversity and outcome for all of these diets.
Totally. And then, so just the final one, and I guess probably the most popular one is the actual time restricted feeding. So each day you have like a fasting period and then a feeding period. So some of the variations are like 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window. Some are like 20-hour fast, 4-hour eating window. So again, a lot of variation. And that's what makes it, like you said, it makes it really difficult to kind of study intermittent fasting because it's hard to compare when they're executed in different ways.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, like, even within studies, of course, like, the researchers try to regulate how the people perform the fasts. Yeah. But, like, even, like, aside from everybody's physiology being different, which is something just, like, the researchers can't control to whatever extent, people are, like, the compliance isn't going to be 100%.
Right.
Like, the research is still really difficult to do.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe let's talk about what like the claims are, or like what the proposed or supposed benefits of intermittent fasting are.
Yeah, there was something kind of related to that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I just have a little thing that I kind of think is interesting to touch on, because
Okay.
some people talk about this a lot and they really believe it, I think, without being critical of it.
Sure.
So a lot of people, like, the idea seems to stem from like the historical behavioral perspective that like humans as hunter-gatherers used to go for like
Yeah.
stretches of time
Right.
without food.
Yeah.
And our bodies, that's like how our bodies evolved. So people claim like this is the natural way to eat, like this is what we should be doing because this is how our bodies evolved.
Right.
But the problem with that is that it's like it's really it's really difficult to be very certain about that kind of claim. Like we're only making those claims, or like whoever is making those claims is only making them based on like correlative evidence. Like
Right.
we don't necessarily know those people were like extremely healthy because they
Right.
did fast for those stretches of time
Yeah.
that there were food shortages.
I totally agree. And that's kind of like the paleo diet, or like, you know, people claim like
Yeah.
this is how our ancestors ate, and like they just assume that they were so fit and healthy, but it's like actually our ancestors died when they were like 40. So like
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
It's not like a
how
1 +
can
1
you-
= 2 scenario,
Yeah.
just because.
It's like how do you
Yeah.
we don't know if those people were super healthy or whatever. I guess people think that they were like super lean, and it's probably like, well, that's probably because their like food supply was like.
That's the other thing is people say, another claim I came across is people say you, on the intermittent fasting diet, you lose fat but you maintain muscle.
I did see something about that. I saw it.
But the data like doesn't support that at all.
Okay, really?
Yeah, for anybody listening, like the data just doesn't support that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah. That's
Because
kind of,
like we were saying earlier, like maintaining muscle has more to do with protein intake and exercise rather
Yeah.
than like overall calorie restriction.
totally. I agree.
So you can't just make that broad claim that intermittent fasting is going to specifically make your body lose fat but not muscle.
And I honestly think even if it did, it would be like, again, such a small difference in like the amount of lean body mass or like muscle that you maintain versus like a calorie restricted diet wouldn't be that different.
You got that right.
Yeah.
You got that right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, spoiler alert, like pretty much from what I've read in a couple in the studies that I looked at anyway, the reviews, basically the outcomes are kind of indistinguishable
Sure.
from calorie restricted diets, and they're like not substantial.
Right. Exactly. So let's get into what people claim about intermittent fasting, or what even some of the research has shown us, and then we'll kind of talk about the cons and how it compares to other diets.
There's a lot to get into.
There is a lot. So what I've read, I mean, I think the main reason people do intermittent fasting, and what, you know, some of the research has looked at, is weight loss. So, using intermittent fasting as a way to lose weight. I think it's kind of attractive to some people because they think that they don't have to, because you have just like a defined period of time where you're eating so little, and then you have a period of time where you're able to, supposedly eat normally. It's more attractive because you're not constantly dieting. You know what I mean? Like, you're not constantly in a calorie restriction every single day. You're not constantly feeling like you're limited in how much you can eat. So I think that's one reason why that's attractive to some people who want to lose weight.
There is some evidence to show that intermittent fasting is associated with less binging than calorie restricted diets.
That's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Okay, no, you know what? Never mind. We're going to talk about this in a sec. There's so much I could talk about. So some other claims or benefits of intermittent fasting that have been seen. So reduced certain cardiovascular indicators. So like cholesterol levels, triglycerides, blood pressure. Another one has been, and I think it would go kind of in tandem with those cardiovascular factors, but like reduced risk for diabetes. And I think that has some things to do with insulin resistance. Did you read that?
Yeah, definitely. Also saw that there was some evidence of decreases in resting heart rate.
Yeah.
But all of them, I think a lot of those were like single studies.
Okay.
And there's way more evidence of that in like rats and mice than there is in human.
Yeah.
Is another thing to think about.
Right. For sure. And then one last one that I noted, and I've heard a lot of people kind of talk about this, but I didn't see a lot of, again, this might be one of the ones that's like, there's only one study or there's not a lot of research, but improved like energy levels.
Oh, okay.
Did you see that? But that's one thing that stands out to me as like, how do you measure that? Like, that's
it's really
very subjective. Like,
at least it sounds very subjective.
Right. Like, how do you can't objectively measure someone's energy level. Like, it's literally just going to be reported.
I mean, you could also ask me like, I don't know, 12 times in a day, and I can give you a different answer every time.
Same, totally. Yeah, that's so true.
And it wouldn't follow the pattern of like, I'm more energetic in the morning and less energetic at night. It would be all over the place.
Yeah, totally. So I don't know, Tareq, if you want to tell me about some of the research that you looked at. I'm sure it's
totally. There were a couple of topics I was pretty interested in with relation to intermittent fasting. So one of them is, so we've talked about this before. Diets will, if they're followed very strictly, more often than not, will lead to some weight loss in the short term. But the problem is long-term maintenance of that. And obviously, just because you've lost weight does not mean that you're automatically healthier.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's a bunch of problems there. So there were, I saw some statistics that there seems to be some reports of losses of weight up to like 10% with calorie restricted diets. But to maintain that, you more often than not need a lot of support.
Right.
And then again, even with support, only about 20 to 50% of people are going to maintain that loss for over a year. Wow. It's really, really difficult. You're more than likely to gain it back with calorie restriction. So we've discussed that many times. And there's not really any evidence to show that intermittent fasting results in any more maintenance than calorie restricted diets.
Yeah, and honestly, from what I've read, there's no, in terms of amount of weight loss as well, there doesn't seem to be a difference between intermittent fasting and calorie restricted diets.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, like a lot of people might be fasting for cultural or religious reasons, and a lot of people are observing Ramadan, and scientists have kind of taken advantage of the fact that there's lots of cohorts of people engaging in intermittent, like a form of intermittent fasting, right, to study. But the problem is that even though there is some weight loss during this period, because people are fasting from dawn till dusk, that length of time changes every day and it varies around the globe. So even studying that is really difficult.
Yeah.
So the kind of maintenance of weight loss claim that some people will have about intermittent fasting, there's really no substantial evidence that it's true.
Yeah.
The one thing that I did see that was interesting related to that is that there doesn't seem to be, like I said, much binging associated with intermittent fasting.
That's so interesting to me. And I mean, I kind of said that before, but, and this is one of the reasons that I'll touch on a little bit more later, but a lot of people say, and I would agree with this, that if you have like even like a small experience or like a lick of disordered eating or like an eating disorder, why like you should stay away from intermittent fasting, because I cannot imagine, like for me personally, I think that would lead to binge eating. Like whether it's calorie restriction or not eating for a whole day or only being able to eat between like 11 a.m. and whatever, like I think that would lead to binge eating for me. But that's just, I mean, that has nothing to do with the research. That just has to do with my personal experience.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, it's so weird, right? Like, there's really no evidence that there's much benefit for weight loss or the maintenance of it. So if people want to lose weight, it's like, I mean, first of all, that's like fraught in itself. Like if you want to lose weight, like for what reason? But if you, are using intermittent fasting to lose weight, or like you think that's going to get you there, the evidence really isn't there. I mean, you probably will lose weight if you calorie restrict yourself with the intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
And you're going to increase exercise. Like that's like.
Well, yeah. So are you saying that from what the research you've seen, like the weight loss claims like aren't?
It's the same as calorie restricted diets. It's kind
right.
of is
There's
what I'm
no
saying.
Yeah. It's not better than just like going on a calorie restricted diet or like counting calories or whatever. It's yeah. Okay, that's what. So there is like, I mean, they have seen that intermittent fasting is associated with weight loss, but it's just no different than like it's no better than just restricting your.
I mean, but if I'm not wrong, like it's because you're restricting some calories through intermittent fasting.
It's exactly the main reason why you're losing weight on intermittent fasting is because you're restricting your intake, like and even keto. We'll do a whole episode on keto, but it's the same thing. Like people say like, well, it changes the like your metabolism and the way that you no, like ultimately it's because you're eating less.
Like and I guess I wasn't very clear earlier. Thank you for pointing that out. Actually, this point is, just because you intermittent fast, but you're going to maintain the same food intake, doesn't mean you're going to lose weight. Like,
agreed.
Just because you're going to it's like
no, it's because it's a form of like essentially skipping meals. Like
you took the words right out of my exactly. And this is kind of this forced me, if you don't mind, I had to have just a little tiny thing here. To look up meal timing, because I thought that was an interesting a place to go to the research from intermittent fasting, because a lot of people, not a lot of people, some people who want to engage in a form of intermittent fasting will like just skip breakfast.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So breakfast skipping is more often than not, no surprise to you probably, more often not related to inadequate nutrition.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
So young adults who skip breakfast are reported to have added sugar levels and lower measures of healthy eating, basically. That's true for sure. People who don't eat breakfast, or people who do eat breakfast, have been seen to have higher intakes of like certain essential nutrients, like potassium or vitamin D and certain things like that. And more than that, daily breakfast eaters are likely to have lower cardiovascular disease risk factors, like elevated blood pressure and higher cholesterol levels, just because they're not restricting that eating and their body can like already start metabolizing in the morning, and they're not like stressing their body out. So there really just doesn't seem to be any weight loss associated with that, or substantial weight loss associated with that. And more than that, even if there is weight loss with skipping breakfast, even if there is weight loss, it not only is it not substantial, but it's really hard to maintain. Like there is inevitable rebound in like 95% of people who are pursuing that.
And we're not saying like you have to eat breakfast. I know people who, like even some dietitians who just like don't feel hungry in the morning and they don't eat first thing in the morning. Like they don't consider themselves like breakfast eaters, but they're doing that from like an intuitive standpoint. You know, they're like, I'm not hungry. And they're also
I was totally approaching it from like a diet perspective, like a weight loss thing.
They're still like mindful. I mean, obviously not a lot of them, but I do know some dietitians who have said like, oh, I don't eat breakfast anymore because I eat intuitively and I'm not hungry in the morning, which is great. But they're also like mindful of gentle nutrition. And so they, you know, they're considering what they eat throughout the day. They make sure they're getting, you know, the nutrients that they need. Whereas like just people who, like you said, you know, skip breakfast because they think, you know, I'm going to cut back on my calories, so I'm not going to eat this meal. You might not necessarily know what you're missing out on, you know, in the morning that you need to kind of make up for later in the day.
And there's also some reports of people claiming that like increasing or like changing up their meal frequency might be effective for losing weight.
Right.
So like I'll have like 7 little meals in a day instead of 3 or something. Like if you're taking in the same number of calories and you're like maintaining your same movement levels, or exercise activity level, it's not going to result in some magical weight loss.
I agree. There's no difference. It's not going to rev your metabolism by eating more frequently or anything like that.
Just like you can't boost your immune system, you can't like rev your metabolism like instantaneously and have that maintain.
Totally. Yeah. Just from, your meal frequency. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's what I've got.
Yeah. Do you have any other studies that you looked at?
Actually, so that was from a different study that that I was referencing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, let me just look at the time here. So we're at 46 minutes. I have a long list of kind of cons of intermittent fasting that I want to go through. I guess I want to preface it by saying that yes, like there may be some positive research related to weight loss, like we said, or related to diabetes risk or cardiovascular risk factors and things like that. But
totally, like what you were saying about like decreased cholesterol, insulin levels, circulating glucose.
There have been studies that have seen those things. But they're also, just because a study like finds or, a certain diet is associated with weight loss or it's associated with lower cholesterol, things like that. Number one, it doesn't mean that there aren't other diets that do that as well. So, you have to consider that. And number two, you have to kind of consider, is the diet, like what you're eating in that diet, is it healthy? And is it something that's sustainable? So first off, with intermittent fasting, it's a diet based on when you eat, not what you eat. So you have to consider, like you said, losing weight doesn't automatically make you healthy. So you have to consider what you would be eating on an intermittent fasting diet as well.
Right.
There's no direction. Like it's strictly like eat this day, don't eat this day, or eat within these hours, don't eat within these hours. And there's no guidance around what foods you should be eating during your feeding hours or your feeding day or whatever that is. So that can absolutely have an impact on your health as well. I don't know in a lot of these studies what the participants were actually eating, but you have to also consider what you would be eating during those diets as well. I don't think that if you were on your feeding day and you just ate pizza and ice cream and donuts, I'm not sure that you would see the outcomes that are claimed about intermittent fasting.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and probably not see the at least positive ones, like the decreased cardiovascular risk ones.
Right, exactly. And as a dietitian, obviously I would prefer you to eat every single day and eat whenever you wanted and eat nutritious food than just skip meals one day and then eat whatever, pizza, donuts, etc., like only on the other days. And also that's not going to promote feelings of like health and energy if you're just, eating whatever on those days. You still have to have some sort of nutritional guidance. So that's one reason why I think intermittent fasting is a little bit questionable, like especially with, tons of people on the internet just saying, I'm an intermittent fasting coach, like follow me, blah, blah, I hope they're providing some nutritional guidance as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The other thing is, so sustainability, and that's something that you and I kind of talked about yesterday, but it's not something that's been studied long term. So we don't know if this is something that, can be, one, like the weight loss and all of those other outcomes, if those things are sustained long term or if they're just kind of a short term effect of intermittent fasting. And two, we don't know if it's actually something that most people can keep up or maintain long term. So I think, and relating to that, I just think about the social aspect of intermittent fasting. Eating is such a social thing for most people, not for everyone, but for a lot of people. And to have to go out for dinner with your friends or go to a family meal and be and sit down at the table while everyone else is eating and be like, oh, sorry, my fasting or my feeding window's closed. That sounds a little bit miserable to me.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is if you're not doing it for a religious or cultural reason and you're doing it because you feel you're sad or you don't feel great about yourself and you're doing it to lose weight, like, I mean, it's just putting the label of intermittent fasting over calorie restriction, and you're just restricting yourself, which, like you were saying, like, might promote just like a binge cycle.
Sorry, I mean, I wasn't, obviously if people are fasting for religious reasons, they're gaining some sort of
no, that's totally different
fulfillment from that, and they're, you know, if they go to a dinner party and they say, sorry, I'm fasting, like, they probably would, I mean, I'm not gonna make assumptions, but I probably wouldn't go if I was fasting, you know, I would just say I'm currently fasting, whatever. But I just mean, like, if this is something you were trying to carry out for the rest of your life, like, it's, again,
no, I agree with you.
Maintaining that social aspect doesn't seem sustainable. Like, you know, maintaining, and that's part of your health.
It sounds
right?
miserable. It sounds miserable to be like
and having a
restricting yourself for just that reason.
Right.
Yeah.
So that for sure is kind of a red flag to me. It's blatantly something that's, you know, sets rules around food. That's also a red flag for me as someone who doesn't, you know, I don't like to set rules and restrictions around eating. Intermittent fasting is, you know, the other term for it is time restricted eating. It's restricted eating. You're putting those restrictions on when you can eat. There may not be a restriction on how much, but there's still a restriction. So that's, again, a red flag for me. And then it's also not appropriate for certain groups of people. So although like some studies have seen that it may like reduce risk for diabetes, it's not appropriate for people with diabetes, especially ones that are on medication, like hypoglycemic medication. You know, you need to be making sure that you're eating at regular times, especially, and, you know, if you're on certain medications, you should be talking to your doctor and your dietitian about, you know, when you should be eating around taking those medications and things like that, to make sure that you maintain not only like managing high blood sugars, but making sure that you don't experience hypoglycemia or lows, like, because that can be really dangerous for people with diabetes.
Totally. I mean, you know, people treat diets as something like, oh, like, I can do this myself, like, I've read everything, and like, I'm gonna pursue this, and like, I want this one outcome.
Yeah.
But I think maybe like more people should be treating it as like, I don't know, it's for your body. Like, if you want some sort of health outcome, then shouldn't you go consult your doctor and your dietitian? Like, if you're upset with whatever aspect of your body, or you feel like you could be healthier, don't take it into your hands to like pursue a time restricted or calorie restricted diet. Why don't you go talk to a professional? I mean, if you can, obviously there's lots of barriers to that for some people.
For sure.
But if you can, talk to a professional and get some guidance to do it in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's one thing that I was going to say, is that, you know, if exactly, you said it perfectly. If you are intrigued or interested in intermittent fasting for some reason, I still like encourage you to like talk to your healthcare professionals about it, and like talk to a dietitian about it. And there are dietitians out there who will support you. You know, they'll tell you, they'll lay out the evidence for you, and they'll tell you, you know, what's behind it, how it works, and then they'll you know, they might say, this isn't something I typically recommend for, you know, maybe a lot of the reasons that we mentioned, but then if it's something you're really set on, they can still work with you to make sure that you're planning it out in a healthful way, you're eating enough, you're still eating enough, you're eating enough like nutrients to actually meet your needs, and, you know, so you're not deficient or, you know, missing out on certain things. And I think that's still really important, because I mean, it really is about, it always comes down to like what you're eating, not when, or, you know, you have to be making sure you're still eating nutritious foods. And we just don't know what like the online intermittent fasting programs, I know there's like apps now and things like that, I don't know what those are telling people, you know, about intermittent fasting or how to do it. So it's kind of worrisome. But one other thing I wanted to say, another kind of population that intermittent fasting is not appropriate for, obviously I already said this, but people with a history of, you know, disordered eating or an eating disorder, intermittent fasting can absolutely like exacerbate symptoms. So kind of like what I said, I mean, I have a history of disordered eating, and probably an undiagnosed eating disorder. And I said, like, I can just imagine how that would exacerbate like binge restrict tendencies. But so things like binges, restrictive, that restrictive mindset or anxiety around food, having those time limits on when you can and cannot eat can, make those or trigger those behaviors. So that's something to consider for sure. And then let me just see here. Oh, one other thing I want to say, there are other dietary patterns that have been studied more long-term that have like the same beneficial effects. So
right.
Things like, shifting towards more plant-based eating or Mediterranean style diets or the DASH diet, like those things, and they're not necessarily like diets, they're more like patterns of eating, but they've, lowered cardiovascular risk factors, lower risk of diabetes, some weight loss. Those things all have showed those things as well. And I think those, are probably
again,
more
just
sustainable.
Goes back to what you said earlier, like it's what you're eating, not what
Exactly.
you're eating.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of putting like hard and fast rules or restrictions on eating, whether that's what you eat or when you eat. But I'd prefer to encourage, and we've said this before, but like the adoption of health promoting behaviors, and working with someone who can help you do that in a way that's sustainable for
That's
you.
the thing. It's so hard. Like if it doesn't come some people, it just comes naturally to them, or their body. You know what? Everybody has so many genetic differences. That's why nutrition is such a difficult thing to study sometimes.
Yeah.
Some people, it comes easy to them they never have problems with food. They never think about it, and they're relatively healthy or whatever. But more often than not, if you're looking to make a change, having support is going to help so much compared to you just trying to do it on your own.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that there's not people out there who can do intermittent fasting and enjoy it and like see benefits from it. But something I get, like that's something that I get on like TikTok a lot, is like if I say something about a specific diet, I get all of these people who like know someone who's doing it or maybe are doing it, and they're like, I'm doing keto and I'm loving it, or I'm doing intermittent fasting and I've never felt better. And it's like, I'm not saying there aren't certain people, but for most people, it might not be something that's sustainable. And
do whatever makes you happy. Like take a shot of apple cider. We've said that before. Like if you're taking apple cider vinegar shots and you love that, like live your life. It's not expensive or whatever. But there are something, like when something's harmful, we talk about how it's harmful, or when something's a total, like people are ripping you off for your money, like what is it? Those lollipops that make you feel full. Like we'll tell you when something's, if you're happy and like you're not doing something to harm yourself, you're totally right. Like
I agree. So bottom line, it's still like intermittent fasting is essentially it's another diet. It's another kind of set of rules that you're putting on your eating, and I think for a lot of people, like I said, it's another way that we're kind of like normalizing ignoring our hunger cues, like whether a calorie restricted diet or you're just putting time limits on your eating. It's kind of like a way that to normalize it and disguise it as healthy.
And I think if someone were to take away anything from this, it's exactly what you just said. Like it's another form of dieting, and hopefully they retain that, like, yes, maybe there are certain outcomes that can be achieved, like weight loss or decreased cardiovascular risk, but the maintenance of intermittent fasting, like other diets, is really difficult. And the research shows that it's not more substantial than just regular old calorie restriction. And there's no magic effect of intermittent fasting. There's no reported results in humans of intermittent fasting decreasing risk of cancer, for example. That's another claim that some people have thrown around. So when you're going into making a change like that, don't do it because you think there's going to be an incredible outcome because of it.
I think if you're going to start a diet, the really important things you have to ask is it sustainable? So intermittent fasting, we don't know. And is it healthy? Like, is this promoting like health promoting behaviors?
Right.
And again, with intermittent fasting, it's not necessarily. Like, there's no kind of guidelines on what you should be eating. So, yeah.
Totally.
Also, I know we're like pretty much at our time. One thing we didn't touch on, maybe we'll touch on it again, or maybe we'll do like an Instagram post or tweet about it or something, but we didn't talk about like exercise performance, and that's something that's also been kind of studied with intermittent fasting, which would be really interesting, but we're like totally at our at the end of the episode now. But I think basically with exercise performance, I'll just briefly say from what I've read, from what's been studied, the results are pretty mixed. Like, you know, a lot of studies have seen that intermittent fasting does negatively affect like exercise and athletic performance, and, you know, just how energetic and you feel when you're exercising. And then some studies have seen like no difference. So the results are mixed, and you can't really conclude anything right now. But I mean, it makes sense to kind of think that if you're not eating one day, you might feel a little less energetic in your workout. Yeah. Right. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there. But wow, I really enjoyed talking about that.
Me too.
I hope you guys learned something.
Like a sports medicine person on one day.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah.
I'm obsessed with track and field. That's all I want to talk about.
Really?
Yeah. Okay.
I love that.
Could I ask you what's been tasty this week?
Tareq, I want to ask you.
Oh, okay.
You asked me what my BS of the week was, so I want to let you go first. What's been tasty for you this week?
You know, I'd like to recommend something to everybody out there. Go to the internet, if you've heard of that, and search for videos of lakes with nature sounds. I've been watching and listening to those a lot, you know, because we can't really be out
that's
much.
So peaceful.
And while I'm studying, I like to have videos of lakes, and I listen to nature sounds.
I love that.
And I like watching the water, the ripples of water on the lake. There is some evidence. So I study vision, and there is some evidence to show that when we're focusing on a cognitive task, like when you're studying or you're trying to read or something, that it's easy to get distracted. So kind of
totally
putting something ambient on in the background, like white noise or whatever, or like a very calming video of like the ripples on a lake, helps to sort of like keep your other senses engaged in a really like mild way, so that you can focus on what you're doing.
That is so neat. I need to try that.
Research, that I haven't really dug too much into, but I love like that little brief bit about it.
Very cool. I definitely, like, when I'm trying to work on something like blog writing or reading, like doing research for the podcast, like I find I get distracted so easily.
If I'm at a library, I'm the person who's like, shh, like, be quiet. I'm trying to work. I need like complete silence, or else like anything will catch my attention.
Yeah.
So that does kind of help me a little bit.
One thing I listen to like nature sounds for is falling asleep. I have the Calm app. I've probably mentioned it before, but for like meditation. But I've been using it the last few months they have sleep stories. So like someone's telling you a bedtime story, which is kind of cool.
Famous people doing
they have some. They have like Bob Ross doing some, and they have Matthew McConaughey, and some famous people that tell like sleep stories. But I don't like the sleep stories. I find they like make me too alert, because I'm like, it makes me anxious because I'm like trying to listen, but then I'm like drifting off to sleep, but then I'm like still trying to listen. So that doesn't work for me. But they have sleep sounds, which they have like nature sounds, and my favorite one is the light rain sound. And I like have to put that on every night now when I go to bed, and it helps me fall asleep. So anyways, love that. I love that. Thank you. So I mentioned this, I don't know if you saw, I did a little on my Instagram this week. I thought it would be kind of fun, since we talked about what's been tasty on Friday. I kind of polled my Instagram audience, and I said, what's been tasty for you guys this week? And I mentioned that we talk about it every week on the podcast, and I told everyone what mine was, so I'm going to say it again here. But I have never made at home Greek lemon potatoes.
Oh yeah, they're so good.
Have you ever had the ones at the Halifax Seaport Market? You know the Greek, the little stand that has like, they have the breakfast sandwiches, and they have the Greek lemon potatoes and other like Greek dishes. that's where I first had them, and I was like obsessed with them. The
I
supermarket, I know, yeah. So, anyways, I have never made them before, and I was like, they can't be that hard. They're potatoes. So I looked up a recipe and I made some Greek lemon potatoes. They did take a while. Have you ever made them?
Yeah.
So it's not just like roasting potatoes with like lemon juice on them. You have to you put them in like a baking pan. So it has to be like a few inches deep. And you peel your potatoes, cut them, and then you put them in the pan and you put olive oil, like chicken broth or vegetable broth, and lemon juice all on top of to cover the potatoes so they simmer.
So it steams them.
Yeah, it steams them. They're simmering in the liquid. And then as they cook, they absorb that olive oil, lemon, vegetable broth mixture, and then you pretty much take them out when most of the liquid is absorbed and it's just oil at the bottom. And some salt and oregano, things like that. But oh my gosh, they're amazing. They're so good. Pat and I ate
Greek potatoes,
the whole pan of them. We just couldn't. We had our dinner,
so good.
And then Pat was like, "Okay, I'm gonna put these in the fridge for leftovers," and I was like, "We could just eat them now."
No, you're not.
Yeah. So we ate the whole pan, but they were amazing. So
that sounds so good.
If you guys have never tried them, you definitely should. Delicious.
That sounds so yummy.
Yeah, it was. All right. Well, that's another episode. No BS nutrition.
Roxanne Gay liked my tweet. I tweeted something and Roxanne Gay liked it.
No,
I know.
Amazing. Also, we've been. I would like to update you guys that Copy the Beagle has resurfaced.
Oh yeah, they've reached out.
Yeah. So we've got a hold of Copy the Beagle. They've listened to all of their shout outs and they are appreciative.
Everyone put your search warrants away. We found Copy.
Yeah. Oh, it's too funny. All right. Well, we will. Thank you guys for listening. Please follow us on social media, our Twitter, Instagram pages. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please leave us a rating and a review. And give us some recommendations. We will shout you out if you give us a recommendation.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.